It's just not working. I cannot get through the gatekeepers. I'm an old school guy. So I'm like, all right, get in the car. Let's go to the mall. So I got 28 leads, less than 4 hours. And I met 5 owners that were actually in their businesses at the time. And I said, problem solved.
It's the deciding who you're going to target and why you're going to target them right now, and then how you're going to communicate why this is relevant to them right now. I think those 3 pieces kind of combine to make, especially with the conversations that are the most valuable potential conversations you're going to have, which is your first touch, your first impression with a potential customer.
But I'm learning.
That's kind of how you ladder somebody up from a learning relationship to an earning relationship.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you a startup founder who bootstrapped your business and you're looking to get more predictable revenue? Listen up. Today's guest is the co-founder and CEO of Predictable Revenue. How many of you out there want predictable revenue? Anyone who is dead serious about nailing down their product market fit, lead generation, and getting more sales, I've got a real treat for you today. Collin Stewart, who's helped build Predictable Revenue. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you having me on.
So tell me, how did this, you've been in the sales and B2B space, and you've got an unbelievable resume, especially on your LinkedIn. How did you get involved in sales from the beginning?
Oh, that's a good question. I started my life in marketing, and I did marketing in school. And then my first office job, I was like lead distribution at a wheelchair lift manufacturer. And I found a way to automate my job by copying and pasting some macros together from Stack Overflow. And I'm not a programmer or an engineer or anything, and I hardly understood anything I was doing other than like macros good, copy paste good, read Stack Overflow for the errors. And I managed to automate my job. But I didn't have enough RAM on my computer to do much else. And so I would sit there and play solitaire, because I went to my boss, I'm like, hey, my computer is like locked up. It's running a heavy macro because it's obviously not optimized. I did a very poor job of doing it, but it did the thing, and it did all the deduplication, and it did sorting and organizing, which doesn't sound like much in 2024 or 2025 when this comes out. But 20 plus years ago, that was a hugely manual process. Like, we were coming from papers. And so I almost got fired, and I was like, well, boss, I got nothing else to do. And her son was the head sales guy. He heard me say that. He walked over and he's like, have I got a job for you? And it was basically like a stack of leads. And he's like, get Collin, buddy. So yeah, that was kind of the entry into the sales world. And I haven't looked back.
Right on. And that was in what year?
4.
So 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And the stack of leads that he gave you, were they qualified leads, and what were you guys selling?
Well, I mean, what is qualified, right? They were decent. I mean, he wasn't handing me like the Glengarry leads, if that's what you're asking. But what we were selling at the time was wheelchair lift devices. And so in America, there's the ADA, and there's certain guidelines for buildings like churches, community centers. There is what is the name of it? In an emergency, there's a place where wheelchair, at least these were the regulations I remember back 20 years ago. They may have changed because I haven't kept up to date on the ADA. But basically, there needed to be a fire plan to get people in a chair out of a burning building, because you obviously can't use the elevators. And so what Garaventa sold was these wheelchair egress devices that you could put a chair on and get people downstairs relatively quickly. And so my job was to call this list of churches and community centers that we'd come in contact with, or we'd ran into at a trade show, and see if they were interested in buying some egress. I think they were called EvacuTracks.
Nice. And how long did you do that for? And then what did you graduate into?
I think I did that for about a year, and I graduated into many things. I think I've sold everything relating to construction and construction sales. So we did wheelchair lifts. I did commercial, residential, industrial roofing. I did kitchen cabinetry to high rises. So biggest sale was like 300 and something kitchens at a time. After that, I did diesel generators twice, and specialty welding equipment as part of one of those things, though I'm an absolutely awful welder. But I really got into the power, and there's just something cool about like a V36 engine that's bigger than your house that's running next to you. It was just kind of fun. And so yeah, I sold diesel generators for a while, but I was always this geeky kid that knew how to copy paste stuff from Stack Overflow. And so every company I worked at, I got pulled into the CRM project. And so even though I was working in construction sales, I was always getting pulled into the technology side of things. And there was always this, I don't know, attraction to it. Yeah. And so, yeah, when I started my first company, you'll never believe it, but it was a CRM company. And I did an absolutely awful job of pretty much everything. But it got me on the track that led me here. So I can't complain too much.
Hey, it's a notch in the belt. It's so funny. You said you love the welding business. My brother's a welder, and you've sold all this different construction equipment and or supplies. That's my biggest client to date. We just signed a couple $100,000 deal, and that's what they do. They do construction projects, and they needed a
Nice.
distributor management system to actually. They have their distributors are doing 5 million, 10 million, $20 million in sales, and they want to manage, track, and measure their sell in from to their distributors, and then the sell out, because they're supplying big retail stores like Ace Hardware, True Value, and all of these. And I never knew how big the industry is, and I learned from the book Predictable Revenue that a niche doesn't mean it has to be small, right? It can be a niche and still be a multi-million-dollar company that you're working with. And so that's been my evolution. And as far as your diesel generators, I was on nuclear powered submarines, dude, and we had big ass diesel generators if you lose power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Too funny. So
That's awesome.
you evolved from that, and now fast forward, and you've been in the B2B space in 10 years. What's like one of the biggest lessons you learned during that time that still surprises you today?
I mean, I think there's a couple of things. I think the biggest one is probably the impact of product market fit on go to market efficiency. And we had this customer in 2016, like January, February 2016. I think we actually started in December, but we didn't get the contract done. It was kind of a handshake deal. A previous great customer got a real big job at a really well-known company. And he's like, I really know it's going to, I need it. I need what you guys can do for me, but I know it's also going to take 3 months for them to get this through legal. So handshake deal, you do all this and I'll make sure we take care of you. And I can't say the name. I'm still talking to their lawyers to see if we can mention them in the book, but it was a very well-known tech company at the time in the transportation space, and that's all I'll say. And we helped them launch. They had one service. They wanted to take that other service and offer it to restaurants. And we helped them launch in the top 50 restaurants in every city in America. And at the same time, we were doing outbound email for other companies. But the thing that kind of broke my brain was, we would send, for an average customer, we'd send 1,000 emails a month, and we'd probably book 8 to 10 meetings. That's pretty good. I mean, it'd be amazing to do that today. And it was okay back then. There were certainly people doing better. There were certainly people doing worse. We sent 1,000 emails for this company. We booked 337 meetings in a month.
Wow. Nice.
Do you know how hard it is to schedule 337 meetings in a month? It's insane. It broke all of our systems. It broke all of our dashboards. It broke my expectation of what's possible. And when we looked back on that experience, because we're like, okay, Krista, we know this is going to be a big one. We didn't quite know how big, but Krista would, on average, she had 5 or 10 clients at the time, and she would book an average total 80 meetings a month. And so in December, she booked 80 meetings. In January, she booked 337. Did Krista magically what did she have over Christmas? There was some supercharged eggnog that just made her 6 to 8 times better. And obviously, Krista was amazing. And I don't want to take anything away from what she did. But the question we were talking about afterwards was well, what if we gave this to somebody else, to one of our other account strategists who wasn't as good? That we were asking ourselves was, well, what if we gave the account to another strategist? And where we ended up was we figured, based on what we saw and the quality of the messaging and all the, when we looked at all the different variables, we think it probably still would have done pretty well. And we all agreed, this is internally at PR when we were talking about the account, we agreed that the primary reason that account did so well was they had such extreme product market fit. And so, they were getting, 33x kind of better results out of our resources than any other company. And so it was that moment that it kind of, and I'd love to say it was that moment it clicked right then, but it was kind of that moment that inspired the thinking that kind of took me, a while to turn around in this caveman brain with the marbles floating around in there. But it kind of sent me on, opened me up to the idea that product market fit isn't binary. It exists on a continuum from weak to strong. If you imagine the strength of your revenue team as like a mathematical equation, and then you put that in brackets, and then right next to it, you kind of multiply that by the strength of your product market fit. That's what we saw with this account. They got 33x better results out of the same inputs than every other one of our customers, even our best customers, because they had such strong product market fit. And we saw the same with other customers that would show up and not know how to articulate who they were going after or why, or, they constantly changed, and they had a negative impact on our team. Their campaigns, their results were significantly worse than benchmark. And so when you look at it, strong product market fit can really put the wind at your sails. Weak product market fit can rob you of money. Honestly, I think, the more I've read about it, the more I realize that it's kind of the place where companies, startups especially, go to die, because you end up blowing all your money on an inefficient go-to-market program, and your money is your lifeline. And if you're not spending it efficiently, you're not getting it back. You're probably not hitting that next raise. And so, yeah, that was the biggest thing that probably changed the way I thought about sales.
Yeah. And so I look at that like a perfect storm. So in order for there to be a perfect storm, there's got to be force multipliers. There's got to be several things happening at the same time. So that company, 300 some leads, it outperformed by what percentage compared to other campaigns, as an example?
Other campaigns were doing like 8 a month. And I'm not going to try and do the math. I feel like I've done it before and it was like 33 or 30 something X better, but I'm a sales guy. Math is not my strong suit.
Yeah, no worries. But it was like 30x. If you want to look at that, right? You're getting 8 qualified leads and or SQLs. Do you still call them SQLs?
We use meetings. These were like confirmed meetings that somebody showed up to, or a salesperson and a prospect showed up to.
Got it. And so do you think it was because the company was branded and was already a globally known successful brand? Or do you think it was just product market fit? Because I think there's several different elements there. Or have you worked with other global brands, right? Because there's different force multipliers there, because it can be timing, just like COVID. During COVID, a lot of people did really, 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 really well because they adjusted to people working from home, as an example. Was it the timing? Was it the branding? Was it the methodology? Like, how many different factors do you think went into it to 30x that client? And have you duplicated that success with another client?
I'd never seen anything close to that. I think TopTel was another one, and we can say their name. They were another one that was up there, but it wasn't close to the transportation company. Looking back, and to answer your question, was it extreme product market fit, or was it branding, or was it something else? I mean, I think they had an offer. So one, they had an extremely recognizable brand. So that certainly was a factor. It's impossible to say how much of a factor it was, but that was definitely a factor. Two, they were coming to restaurant owners with an offer that was akin to, do you want to save money and make money at the same time? And
so the value proposition, force multiplier, the brand, force multiplier.
And their competition was, spending money on your own internal person at the restaurant. So like, I'd argue I would lump that in with product market fit. So recognizable brand, product market fit, really strong offer, really strong financials or economics behind the offer. These were all kind of wins at the sales. And I think it's, I don't think it matters to say, oh, which one was it? But I think it's important to say for startups and founders and people investing in go-to-market programs to recognize that if you're selling a commodity into a commoditized market, you're not going to get the same results as a tech company. And so whether you're looking at, advice that some sales leader from a venture-backed startup is giving, or you're trying to compare yourself to industry benchmarks, I think it's important to understand the industry and the context of the product and the context of the go-to-market channel. Because back then, Outbound was really new. And I mean, Salesforce had only started using it 10 years previous, something like that. And like there wasn't a lot, there was some information, but there wasn't tons, especially compared to now where everybody knows how to spell SDR and people know about email deliverability and they know about setting domains up and all that. Like none of that was known. I should say none of that, but it was a lot less known back then. And it
Yeah, I
kind of
get
connects
it.
to another thing that we learned throughout our time was demand gen channels go through a cycle very similar to the technology adoption life cycle. And this is something that came out of farming, but it was popularized by Jeffrey Moore in Crossing the Chasm. And I think my main takeaway from that is that, people that are early to a channel are going to reap the greatest rewards. And I remember, and like as more folks adopt the channel, there's more traffic in that channel, so it becomes harder to compete. When it becomes harder to compete, people invest more in technology and process, which kind of drives up the quality of the competition, and it raises the bar from kind of a 1-2 no limit buy-in to like a 25-50 no limit buy-in. Like once upon a time, I'd be comfortable sitting down at a casino playing 1-2 no limit, and you could buy in with $100 and grind it out and probably be okay. You're probably undersized a little bit, but there is zero chance I'm going to sit down at a 25-50 limit table. I know my money's gone instantly in that kind of scenario. And I think Outbound has become a little bit, I don't think it's quite as hard as like 1-2 to 25-50 if you've played any poker, but it's the cost of sitting at the table in terms of like the table stakes have gone way up in terms of there's better training available, there's better information, there's better tech, there's better tools, there's better data, there's all these things that you can do. And so the minimum buy-in has gotten higher and higher and higher. And when that happens, your cost to acquire a customer goes up. And then the people on the receiving end of that channel become a little more desensitized to it. Like in the early days, you could send an email and it was, hey, first name, could you point me in the direction of the person that handles X? And like 9 times out of 10, that was the best email. We tried all these other variables and all these other things, but like that template was like our moneymaker in the early days. And now it probably wouldn't do so well because you can, there's all these other variables and you can be doing micro campaigns and you can be kind of building your own intent signals with tools like Clay, and you can use scraping and AI to like go and find these information that isn't available in tools like Apollo. So there's some pretty cool things you can do, and it's evolved to the point where it's much, much more advanced. It's a little bit more expensive to do, or it's significantly more expensive to do than it was 10, 12 years ago. And so, yeah, I think that's the kind of the evolution of a demand gen channel. It gets, as the volume increases, the cost to acquire a customer using that channel increases as well.
Yeah, 100%. Because, the competitive landscape is enormous, right? Like, how do you take on a sales force? Like, I owned a sales machine. I bootstrapped it. I created technology that can manage, track, measure, align, and reward sales organizations, distribution organizations, companies, manufacturers who have massive amounts of distributors. But we get thrown in that bucket of CRM. Oh, you guys are another. And we're like, no, we're actually not. And that's why I haven't spent a ton of money running ads, because if I start competing with HubSpot at Salesforce's budget, that's a road to the bottom. It's a race to the bottom for, somebody who's bootstrapped a startup, regardless of my background, right? So what do you think? Why do you think, or what do you think startups, for the most part, fail to do with their go-to-market strategies to actually be profitable and avoid that graveyard that you talked about?
I think so much of it comes down to timing. I mean, your go-to-market investments, when like waiting until your product market fit is strong enough before you make these go-to-market investments. I was on a call with a founder today, and they're thinking, oh, they initially came to us and they said, hey, we want to outsource and we want to get a bunch of SDRs. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that. And we kind of talked through different options and how complex the product was and this and that. And where we ended up landing was, what is like, let's pause on all this outsourcing or building in-house stuff or all this stuff. I'm like, what is the goal? Like, what are you trying to achieve in 6 months? And we had always talked about revenue goals, but I'm like, what is the impact of hitting this revenue goal? And it was a raise. And when we got down to it, Outbound isn't going to help this guy. He's got numbers that they need to hit in 6 months. Outbound takes, if we started today, it's going to take 6 months to probably get your first deal. So I'm like, it's an amazing customer acquisition channel, but if you expect results from it right away, you're toast. Like you're going to have a horrible experience. If you give it, 6 months to show some signs of life, and then another 6 months to mature, that first year is going to be the worst. But year 2, year 3, year 4, it's real profitable. And some of the fastest growing companies in the world have used Outbound. And I think the CRO Zenefits shared some interesting stats at SaaStr this year, and I've got a post on it. I can send to you afterwards if people are interested. And I kind of use that to benchmark the strength of their product market fit. But the moral of the story is Outbound was I believe was their most profitable channel. And it accounted for, I might have this number wrong, but 50%, 60% of their early growth, and probably 50% of next year's of 2025's growth is what they're forecasting. And so people keep saying Outbound is dead. It is absolutely not dead. It is extremely easy to screw up, and it is very easy to measure on the first few months. I could absolutely see how you would try Outbound, or any channel for that matter, especially if you don't understand it. I have wasted a lot of money on a lot of channels that I didn't understand. And it's hard. It's scary. You're investing a lot of money, and you got to trust some sales guy that says, "Oh yeah, it's going to work. You got to give it 6 months. You got to give us 12 months of your money in order for it to really work." But that's just the kind of the math of things. And so I think, to answer your question, the biggest thing people screw up is timing, is understanding when is the right time for me, my product, and the strength of my product market fit to make this investment in like really ramping up our outbound or in demand gen or sales functions, because you really want to time it with an increase in the market. And you really want to, or I shouldn't say time it with an increase in the market, but an increase in your capacity to close. And as your product becomes more mature, as the CEO, you've got a little bit more time to start selling. And I think the founder's the only person that really can do that. And so then you got to look at, okay, where are deals coming from, and what do we need to do to support the CEO closing more business? And I think a lot of companies jump right into outbound and say, oh, this is going to be perfect from day one, and not understand that it's going to take at least 6 months to get going and 24 months to be profitable. So that's the thing that's been, I think a lot of founders, get wrong, and it's probably costing them lots of money.
And they're not ready to fulfill or do founder-led sales. Speaking to that, what has been your experience doing founder-led sales and with predictable revenue?
Yeah, I mean, I came from sales, and so I ran the sales function until, or I was our primary salesperson until we hit our first $1 million in revenue, which is maybe a little bit too long, but it was, when you're a founder and it's early and it feels like everything you're doing, you're not good at, but like being good at sales was like my safety blanket. The equivalent of like a kid hugging their favorite stuffed animal. I could jump on a sales call and just relax and be comfortable talking to people. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy meeting people. I'm not trying to trick people into buying from me. I'm trying to understand what it is that they need. And if I think I can help them, be like, hey, what do you think about this? Here's a shirt, try it on. Does that fit? Cool. You want to talk about it? Great. If not, if it doesn't fit, I totally understand. Yellow's not your color. I get that. And so I really enjoyed having that thing I could hang on to. So I definitely came to it with an advantage, but I've really enjoyed I haven't, I thought I was going to get out of it, and I'd be out of it, after $1 million, and I'd run the team, and then I'd manage folks. And I've been out of it. I've been in it. I've been out of it. I've been in it over the last 12, 13 years. And I still enjoy getting into that founder role. I do think, or into that sales role, I do think as the founder, getting involved in a sales process on a regular basis helps keep me in touch with the customers and the market. And so it is one thing that I try and do every year, is spend a couple weeks taking on deals. It usually coincides with one of our AEs taking some holidays, and I'll jump in and I'll cover for them. One, to prove that I still got my chops, and two, just to get a sense of what's out there, what's happening, be that in contact with customers. And then, I don't know. Yeah, I always find I learn something from it. It's always a fantastic experience. Plus, it gives the AE some, a little. If I close one of his deals, I'm not taking their commission. I'll give it to them. So kind of helps
Yeah,
them
I
feel not
love
so
it.
bad about taking a
I
holiday.
love I love jumping in. I'm a big Zig Ziglar fan. You know, I'm old school. I made my first million knocking
Yeah,
on doors, talking about outbound. I did it, you know, door to door, or
literally outdoors.
I did outbound outdoors. Yeah. Um, and you know, there was some good days and there was some bad days. And as I look back, there were some amazing days. Like I really learned so much from. I literally have went outdoors in 7 different countries around the world, not just selling, but training sales teams, building and scaling sales teams, and from the United States to India, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. Like I've lived in Southeast Asia now for 30 years and built and scaled sales teams. So when people say today that outbound doesn't work, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Outbound definitely works. And I mean, even outdoors outbound. I had one of my sales agents, we sell not only and provide the sales machine to scale organizations and their sales teams, but we have loyalty apps for small businesses. It's kind of like having, you know, Uber Eats for your own restaurant or your own salon or your own bar and restaurant, right? It would cost you, anywhere between 50 to $100,000 to make your own app. We provide those apps for like $500 a year. Hey folks, if you're enjoying this episode and you're picking up what I'm putting down and what the guests are actually putting out there, do me a favor, like and comment what you liked about the episode, or even comment what would you like to hear? What topics would you like to hear in the future? Because believe me, it matters. I read absolutely every single one of them, and I want to bring you more and more value to help companies scale so that we can grow this podcast to make a bigger difference. Now let's get back to the show.
In Southeast Asia, the loyalty apps scene is much different over there than it is in North America. They're significantly more important.
Yeah, huge, huge. But if you look at the research from Gartner and globally, having rewards, point systems, these little Starbucks cards, we just digitalized it for companies and small businesses. And one of my sales reps was like, it's just not working. I cannot get through the gatekeepers. I'm an old school guy. So I'm like, all right, get in the car. Let's go to the mall. And so I got 28 leads in less than 4 hours. And I met 5 owners that were actually in their businesses at the time. And I said, problem solved. Now, I'm not going to do this with you again because now you know how to do it. And I've shown you how to do it. So does outbound work? 100% it works. But how motivated are you to do it? Anybody can tell me what's not possible, but find out what is possible. And so when I hear you guys talk about, or you talk about, outbound definitely works. It just takes some time to ramp up. But obviously, you've got to have the right messaging and be talking to the right audience to actually generate a qualified lead. But this is your arena. This is where you play in the online world, me, the offline, but I'm learning, right?
One of the things we've seen in the last couple of years is that what's becoming more and more important is the targeting element. I think there's lots of noise right now because everybody's really excited about AI SDRs. And I totally understand. I'm playing with AI all the time. I'm going to get off this podcast. I'm going to go play with Replit, and I'm building a tool to sync my Zoom meetings and ask it questions and do some stuff and automate some stuff for me. And that's pretty fun. And then I can, like a caveman like myself, can go and do that. So I understand why everybody's really excited. I do think in some cases AI SDR is a really good and a really horrible idea. And it all comes down into how you do it. If you abstract away the human creativity of designing the campaigns, and that's when I say designing campaigns, you can call it sequences, campaigns, cadences. It's the deciding who you're going to target and why you're going to target them right now, and then how you're going to communicate why this is relevant to them right now. I think those 3 pieces kind of combine to make, I don't know, there's something really special about a really well thought out campaign. And I think when you abstract that layer away to an AI, I just don't think the AI is capable of being able to make those leaps or make those inferences. And I've tried, like since ChatGPT came out, I've been feeding it prompts and data, especially when they're like data analyzer. I don't know what they call it now. It was code interpreter. Now it's the data analyzer function or whatever the thing is that can ingest data and do analysis. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be able to feed in all my campaign data and give it all these prompts and feed it the book and feed it all of our like old wins and messaging. And I'm just going to be able to say, hey, here's the client. Give me a strategy. And I have tried so many times and it's just nothing but gobbledygook that comes out. And so I am sure that these companies that are doing the AI SDR are doing a much better job than I was sitting with a prompt. And I still think if you're abstracting away that human creativity, you're probably doing it wrong. I think I'm more of an AI should be the Iron Man suit as opposed to like Skynet or Wall-E. Like I'm a big fan of the idea of agents and doing these things, but like human supervision and human in the loop kind of in a human in the loop way. So you can increase the quality and the conversion rate of what the human is doing already, and not as a way of totally replacing humans, especially with the conversations that are the most valuable potential conversations you're going to have, which is your first touch, your first impression with a potential customer. Unless you're operating in an absolutely massive market, you're probably going to care quite a bit about your conversion rate. And I think there's a bunch of AI tools out there right now that are just glorified spam cannons with some mediocre personalization stitched in. And so I'm not against AI as part of the sales workflow. I'm a big fan of it. I use it a lot. Our company uses it a ton. I just think throwing everything on autopilot is probably not the way, at least at December 18th, 2024. It very well could be the next, GPT-5 release comes out in 2 weeks and then I'm totally wrong. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of spray and pray out there right now. But to your point about SDRs and AI getting it right, I'm sure you've heard of Fuel AI and or Air.ai, these conversational voice interpreted AIs making actual calls. There's one out there with Tim Cook from Air AI. Have you heard that one?
I've heard a couple of them. I've worked with a couple of companies in the AI space, specifically in the AI voice space on their go-to-markets. And at least in the US, I believe cold calling with an AI agent, I believe is illegal, but there's some really interesting use cases, I think, for calling customer service. I've heard of companies using it for AR, so their accounts receivable, and calling and like automating those dials, because I don't think that's illegal. I think I suspect that's okay. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, in sales development, 50% of your meetings are going to come from email and 50% are going to come from the phone. And like, I don't know. I'm skeptical. If somebody AI called me, I mean, one, I don't pick up a ton of calls unless there's a human's name on it. And if there's a human's name and I think it's an SDR, I'll probably pick it up, because I'll be honest, there aren't that many SDRs that call me from their cell phone. And if you're trying to get in touch with me and you're an SDR, call me from your cell phone so I can see your name pop up and I'll give it an answer. Because I love hearing scripts. 9 times out of 10, I'll ask them like, how do you think you did? Give them some feedback, and like have a little chat with them, even if it's not something that I'm interested in, and I'll genuinely take calls. But what I don't love is the people that are dialing, 600 lines at a time, and
Anonymous callers.
Yeah,
you're not picking up that call.
No.
Right.
No,
I don't pick up that call. But if it's a name, I'm going to pick it up. And to your point, if it's an SDR, let them go through their spiel and then give them feedback. And if they're good, recruit them.
Totally.
That's my methodology. Damn, you're good, dude. How would you like it? How would you like? And I'll just turn it around on them, and then I'll make a sale and recruit them.
We always knew we had a good campaign or a good SDR when somebody was trying to poach one of our account strategists or one of our SDRs. It was always like a badge of honor.
I'm a legend, dude. So many of my guys get poached because I teach them next level sales, taking people from where they're at to where they want to be with needs, economic factors, X factors, which are objections, handle it all. And then timing, of making your offer. That's next level sales. You just take them step by step through those levels. And as long as your product market fit and they're the ideal client, you're going to make a sale because it's all about them, not all about you. Anyway, that's how I see it. But I've had lots of guys poach and they become sales leaders at other organizations. And I'm like, you know what? I get it. I get it. I'm not going to pay you $100,000. I taught you from scratch. Right. So it happens. Now, in saying that, I want to stay on this thread of the AI gig because I'm currently incorporating it into our system for big data analysis because of what I've found. And, this is a surprise to me, Colin, because I built a sales performance management system. That's what I used to call it to separate myself from CRM. Do we have a CRM? Yeah, you can have that. That's free. You can get them for free. Doesn't matter. But do you have a performance management system to drive and scale your business? Most people don't. And Salesforce don't do that. HubSpot don't do that. Zoho don't do that. Our system does do that because it has rewards, recognition, competition, compensation, coaching with the CRM, with Zendesk, like with all of these different things in one system. So you can scale your business and not be confused. And so what I found though is these big manufacturing companies, distribution companies, and even banks are like, okay, love it. You have AI do the data analysis. You have big data. You have a data performance management system in it, big query, big data. Can it give us, real time feedback on all of the credit card transactions that have happened, right? Instantaneously. And so we can see trends and get insights, but have it give us advice. Anyway, we're building that or, partnering with AI companies to do that with all the data. We're talking billions of sales and or millions of transactions. In your experience, how good is AI for using it to coach your sales reps based on uploading a process and scripts and giving them feedback? Because there's lots of companies like Brevity out there and other companies that are AI focused that actually provide the service. Do you have any experience doing that with your own team?
Yeah, I haven't used too many of these services. I've used some, and there are some good ones, some bad ones. I haven't been in the market and testing a bunch in the last kind of 6 months, and so I don't want to comment because everything's evolving so quickly. What I can say is the way we do it here is we have GPTs that we build in house. You go into Chat GPT and you make your own. You go make your own GPT, and we add a bunch of training data, and we'll do that on a client basis. We'll upload all of their. You can do it in Claude's Anthropic as well. You create a project, you upload all the client's data, and then you can ask questions of it. And we'll do that for a client. We'll do that for messaging, for campaign creation, for when we do clay work of like, hey, help me ideate on these things. And so we'll upload various different contexts to these GPTs so that our internal team can go. And we don't have a ton of tools rolling around, but we do have a lot of people using our internal GPTs.
You're using several different AI tools like Apollo. You mentioned Apollo, you can get the lead. I just had the founder of Super Benji. They're out of England. They're out of Europe. It takes Apollo stuff to an entirely new level. How Apollo scrapes data to get to the decision makers or the C-suites, right? Basically, it gives you the data from the companies of how to, who to contact. What they did with Super Benji is they not only get the contacts, but what they can do is they can scrape the data of the internet of the individual and find out his personality, his LinkedIn, the socials, and finds out who you are and your terminology and how you relate. And it'll build a campaign for that individual. And it's all AI based. And we're considering putting it in the sales machine because it's like Apollo on steroids with an Iron Man suit as your co-pilot, right?
Nice.
Have you heard of Super Benji?
It sounds really familiar, so I'm. It sounds really familiar, but maybe I'm thinking of another Benji. I can't comment one way or the other. We do use Apollo internally, and we also use it side by side with a tool called Clay, and we do similar things. Clay is just a little bit more of like a DIY. I don't know if you can tell this about me, but I'm a bit of a DIY guy myself. I got a brake problem on my bike. I'm gonna get the tools and I want to go fix it. I'll do a poor job of it, but I got a little prototype I'm trying to build, and I'm like, I'm gonna find a way to get this done in Replit. I've always been that way. Like, oh, can we buy this tool? I'm like, but I could build it in a spreadsheet and it'd be fun. And Clay is one of those great tools. My favorite thing to do is with Clay is that, yes, it's got a bunch of data enrichment and you can get contact data and all that. And we use it to improve the data quality of Apollo. We also use it to create signals and intent data that, like first party intent data. If we think a company would do a better job of selling to left-handed CEOs, then we'll try and scrape kind of their profile, or we'll scrape the website and see if we can throw the body text into a GPT. But the coolest thing about Clay is that you can take a list of companies and you could say, okay, go scrape their LinkedIn, give me that body text. Now go scrape their website. Now go do a Google search for site, company domain, customers, or case studies, or white papers, and then give me the first link, and then scrape that first link. And now I've gone from I have the company's domain to I have their case studies page in plain text in here, and I can feed that into an AI and say, hey, tell me who their customers are. And here's a description of the company. Tell me what you think they did for Kodak. And then I can use that as a snippet in one of my personalization snippet. Or I could say, hey, tell me if they sell to companies like Kodak, because that's a qualifier or disqualifier for me. And there's a lot of different things you can do with a process like that. My absolute favorite is scaling up GPT queries and running 1,000 at a time. And yeah, Glaze is a tool I have spent a lot of time in, and I could probably go on for hours and hours and hours about how interesting and fun it can be with some of the stuff you can build in there.
Our listeners out there, they're looking for what's real, relevant, and working right now. And you said, one of the biggest things about being successful in going to the market and getting your go-to market timing right for you to be successful. So what do you think are the steps that founders need to take before they go to market? Because you said it's timing, right? And if you get it wrong, you can fail, and especially if you don't have the budget. So what do you think are the steps they should take first before they hire your company, Predictable Revenue?
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like the journey goes like, oh, go get 500,000, then hire PR. Like, obviously, that'd be a crazy thing to say, but you should do it. You should think about doing it anyway. I think the steps are, I don't think founders realize how much time or how much value you can get out of your customer development process. I think everybody looks at customer development as this research process. And for those on the sales side that aren't familiar, the customer development process is sort of like the sales discovery process, but you don't have anything to sell yet. And it's a method for startups to go and find these unmet needs in the market. And I think a lot of founders don't realize that you can connect a customer development process and a sales process together. And I've got a book coming out in October 2025 that kind of documents kind of a little bit about my journey on all the things I've screwed up, but specifically how to connect your customer development process with your sales process. There's so many founders I talk to, and I'm helping them try and find their first customers. And my first question is, from the people, like, how many customer development interviews did you do? 50, 100? Great. How many of them turned into customers? On the companies that aren't growing, it's always zero. On the companies that are growing quickly, it's always a bunch. And that's the strongest signal to me, because one, if you're talking to somebody about something that's really painful and it's painful enough, they're going to pull it out of you, right? And so the number of people do that is sort of like the measure of the pull. It's an early measure of the strength of product market fit.
That's coming from a completely different place and space of what most people are talking about, as far as defining not only the product market fit, but your ideal client profile, right? It's going and figuring out, okay, who are the clients you want to work with? Essentially, what are their biggest problems? And how can you solve that problem for them? Is that what you're saying? Like, before you even get that startup or you go that direction, find out the niche you want to play in, and then find out what their problems are and how to solve those problems. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Step one is make sure that a problem exists that's painful enough to dedicate your next 5 to 10 years of your life to solving. I mean, that's something that I feel like a number of founders I've talked to, they had this pain point themselves and they just, feel the dreams did. If I build it, they will come. And with the result is a bunch of hammers in search of nails, which is not a great place to start a go-to-market program from. And so my kind of process is exploratory customer development to find a gap in the market. And then step two is focused customer development to verify that 80% of the people you talk to within a specific ICP share that pain. And then the next step is paper feedback. So you have like a paper prototype and you get their feedback on, hey, this is the thing I'm trying to build. If I build this, would you use it? And at the end of every step, I've got, I'm a dirty little salesperson. So I've got a call to action, an invite to the next stage in the process. And the last step in the customer development process is the real feedback and say a real prototype feedback and say, hey, I built this thing. You said you would use it. Do you want to give it a try? And then from there, it's okay, let's talk about the impact that this could have on your organization. And I'd like to invite you into a sales process. I probably wouldn't use those exact words, but that's kind of how you ladder somebody up from a learning relationship to an earning relationship.
Learning to earning. I love it. That's a bomb. You just dropped a bomb. Learning to earning. And so the book, what's the title of book? And because I'm looking for it coming out, especially so I can connect the dots, and also the how to actually go to those. So my ICPs is now manufacturing and distribution companies and banks, because I found out the front of the house, the sales, the customer success, especially in Southeast Asia, they're using Excel. Like this right here is their lead generation book. They go out and they do events and they staple the business cards in here, and then they go back and put them in Excel. They don't want the frontliners having access to the back end of the bank, but I can do and automate all of that for them. So I'm talking to banks right now. What would be your methodology for getting them into a room and or doing a survey online? Like, how would you approach doing that for your ICP?
I mean, it kind of depends on where you're at in the go-to-market maturity spectrum, right? As an early founder and you're just trying to get those first customer development interviews started, I go with the ask for help. Hey, can I pick your brain? I'm working on this thing. Can I get some feedback on it? And you can use whatever channel works for you, whether it's email, LinkedIn, the co-working space where you hang out, the coffee shop where your customers are, the mall. But I always start with asking for feedback. And then at the end of every customer development interview, I always invite them into the next stage. And the fifth stage is a sales process. So I know it's a long walk to get there, but you learn a ton along the way. And lots of people are going to drop off, but the signal is, when you're getting consistently this profile of person tends to stay in the process, that's how you're really getting close to like what a real ICP looks like. So much of what we learn in, how do you find your first customers and how do you do customer development is all theoretical. And I think when you actually get out, interview folks, invite them to the next step, it's how you turn the theoretical into practical. When you actually, a dollar changes hands, that's when you turn it into, that's like the crowning achievement of customer development, because now that's the moment where they're a customer. Everything else is if you never ask anybody for money, it's not a sales program. It's a university research project. And it's as soon as you get your first dollar, it's like now it was customer development.
Yeah, that's crossing the chasm, right? And from learning to earning. And Collin Stewart, ladies and gentlemen, this has been phenomenal. Go from learning to earning, and that's what's going to create predictable revenue. You've done it. The company is predictable revenue. What do people need to do to reach out when they're ready to work with you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email. It's my name with 2 L's at predictablerevenue.com. And if you like the customer development stuff, I've got a founders edition newsletter that I write that talks about all of this. And I've kind of shared the journey of putting together the book, which you asked me earlier, but I never answered you. The book is called The Terrifying Art of Finding Customers.
The terrifying art. Yeah. But it's actually, the euphoria of finding the right customers for your business to help you scale. I'm looking forward to the book. I want to thank you, Collin, for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Predictable Revenue. If you want it, seek him out and he'll help you get it. Thanks for being on the show.
I think you got my original co-founder coming on in a couple of weeks or whenever, depending on when this comes out. So like, hey, Aaron, if you're listening. And thanks to everybody for listening. Nice to meet y'all.
That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for joining me today. And if you got value from this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and refer a friend. And if you want even more value, go to thesalesmachine.com, click on resources, and there's tons of resources there to increase profits and drive performance in your business. Right on, come on.